I need to check the names file to make sure I don't use any of them, then write the story. The forbidden names are Margaret Whitfield, Brittany, David, Linda, Eleanor Brennan, Patrick, Caroline, Frank Donovan, Judith Calloway, Natalie, Ryan, Owen, Dorothy, Trevor, Cassandra, Wallace, Gloria Hartwell, Caleb, Serena, Praudlet, Veronica, Derek, Suzanne, Brenda, Harriet, Colin, Rachel, Nina, Friat, Colin, Rachel, Nina, Loretta, Peter, Shannon, Patricia, June, Elliot, Renata, Warren, Miriam, Dennis, Tara, Beverly, Marge, Helen, Marcus, Richard, Lorraine, Kyle, Adrian, Claudette. I'll use new names: Irene, narrator, Jason, son, Amber, daughter-in-law, Gail, friend, Hank, late husband, daughter-in-law, Gail, friend, Hank, late husband. I keep a little notepad on the kitchen counter. It's been there for 30 years. Same spot right next to the coffee maker. My late husband used to leave me notes on it. Gone fishing. Back by noon. Picked up milk. Love you. After he passed, I kept the notepad there anyway. Old habits. My daughter-in-law threw it in the trash the first week she moved in. Said it was cluttering up the counter. I found it in the garbage under a pile of coffee grounds, and I washed it off and put it right back. That should have told me everything I needed to know about how the next 2 years were going to go. But I'm a slow learner when it comes to my own son. Always have been. My name is Irene. I'm 63 years old. I was an ER nurse for 31 years. Night shifts, trauma bays, the kind of work that either breaks you or makes you so calm under pressure that nothing rattles you anymore. I retired 2 years before my husband Hank passed. We had 4 good years together after that, just the 2 of us in our house in Dayton, Ohio. Garden in the back, porch in the front. Every morning we'd sit out there with our coffee and watch the neighborhood wake up. After Hank died, I kept doing it. Just me and 1 mug instead of 2. My son Jason is 34. He works in IT. Good steady job, good salary. He married Amber 3 years ago at a small ceremony out in Columbus. I paid for half the wedding. I don't say that to keep score. I say it because it matters later. About 18 months ago, Jason called me. He said he and Amber were having a hard time. Rent had gone up. They were trying to save for a house, and could they possibly just temporarily move in with me? My house has 3 bedrooms. It's just me. Of course I said yes. Just until we get back on our feet, Mom, he said. A year at most. I made up the guest room. Put fresh towels out, cleared half the closet in the hallway. I even bought a second coffee maker because Amber likes those single-serve pods, and I use a regular drip pot, and I thought, well, no reason we can't both have what we like. The first month was fine, mostly fine. Amber was quiet, a little distant, but I figured she was adjusting. It's not easy moving into your mother-in-law's house. I gave her space. I didn't hover. I kept my routines and let her keep hers. The second month, small things started shifting. Amber rearranged my living room. I came home from my Wednesday morning water a books class, and the couch was against a different wall, and the armchair Hank used to sit in was moved to the corner. When I asked about it, she said it flowed better this way, and that the old arrangement was blocking the energy. I moved the armchair back that night after she went to bed. The third month, she started commenting on my grocery shopping. I'd come home with my usual things: chicken thighs, whatever vegetables were on sale, a box of those butter cookies I've loved since 1987, and she'd look through the bags with this expression on her face like I'd brought home a bag of rocks. We're trying to eat clean, she told me. Could you maybe check with me before you buy things? We all share this kitchen. I looked at her for a long moment. This is my kitchen, I said, quietly, pleasantly, but I'll keep your preferences in mind. She smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. By month 4, Jason had stopped pushing back on anything she said. I'd see it happen in real time. Amber would say something. I'd glance at my son, waiting for him to say something, and he'd just look at his phone or find somewhere else to be. My boy, who I raised to be kind and fair, had learned how to disappear in the same room as 2 women in conflict. That hurt more than anything. Amber did. I want to be honest about that. The thing that changed everything happened on a Tuesday morning in March. I came downstairs at 6:30 like I always do, made my coffee, went to get the creamer from the refrigerator and found a combination lock on the small mini fridge I keep in the mudroom off the kitchen. I'd had that fridge for 15 years. It's where I keep overflow groceries, my meal preps for the week, the good cheese I like that comes from a small dairy up near Lake Erie. There was a combination lock on it. A brand new one, still had the little cardboard tag hanging off it. I stood there in my robe and slippers, staring at that lock for probably a full minute. Then I heard Amber come downstairs. "Oh good, you saw it," she said, like we'd been in the middle of a conversation. "I hope you don't mind. Jason and I bought some things in there, and I just wanted to make sure everything stays organized. You know how it gets." I turned around and looked at her. "No," I said. "I don't know how it gets. It's my mudroom. That's my refrigerator." She shrugged. "It's just easier this way." "Where's the combination?" I asked. I'll write it down for you later." She poured herself a cup of coffee from my coffee maker, not the pod one I'd bought for her, mine, and went back upstairs. I stood in that mudroom for another minute. Then I went and got Hank's old toolbox from the garage. Now I want to be clear, I'm not a dramatic person. 31 years in an emergency room teaches you that most situations require precision, not reaction. You don't scream in a trauma bay. You assess, you act, you move. I took that with me when I retired. I assessed. The lock was threaded through the handle. The handle was attached with 4 screws. I removed the handle entirely, set it on the mudroom shelf, and put the lock, still attached to the handle, on the kitchen counter where Amber would see it when she came back down. Then I went and sat on my porch with my coffee. It was cold that morning still. That particular gray Ohio cold that settles in before spring really commits. I sat there in my coat over my robe and I thought about Hank, and about the 30 years I'd spent in this house, and about the notepad by the coffee maker. I thought about all the small things I'd let go of over the past 4 months, because I told myself it wasn't worth the fight, and I realized that not worth the fight had been slowly becoming, I don't exist in my own home. Nurses don't get to feel sorry for themselves on shift. You learn to file things away for later. I'd been filing for 4 months. I was done filing. When I came back inside, Amber was standing in the kitchen holding the lock and the handle with an expression I hadn't seen on her before. Not anger. Something more like the moment before anger, when a person realizes the ground shifted while they weren't paying attention. "What is this?" she said. "That's the handle from the mudroom refrigerator," I said. "And the lock you put on it. You took off my lock." I removed the handle it was attached to. The lock is still perfectly intact. She stared at me. "I can't believe you, Jason." She called up the stairs. "Jason, can you come down here?" My son appeared at the top of the stairs in his work-from-home setup, sweatpants, laptop tucked under his arm. He looked between us. "Mom took off the lock," Amber said. He looked at me. "Mom, the mudroom refrigerator is mine," I said. "The mudroom is mine. This house is mine. I'm happy to have a conversation about how we share this space. I'm not willing to have locks put on my appliances in my own home." Jason rubbed the back of his neck. That gesture, he's been doing it since he was 14. It means he knows he's wrong and doesn't want to say so. "It was just to keep things organized, Mom." "Then I'm happy to talk about organization. No more locks." There was a silence. "Fine," Jason said, and went back upstairs. I thought that was the end of it. I thought we'd had a moment of clarity and everyone understood where the lines were. I was wrong. That same week, I came home from visiting my friend Gail. She lives over in Oakwood. We have lunch every other Thursday, and found that Amber had moved my sewing things out of the small bedroom I use as a craft room and stacked them in boxes in the hallway. The room had been rearranged, new curtains on the window, not my curtains, hers. A baby monitor on the dresser, even though Amber wasn't pregnant. I found out later she told Jason she wanted that room as a future nursery/home office hybrid, and he'd said okay without mentioning it to me. I sat in the hallway next to my boxes of fabric and patterns and buttons and thread. 40 years of sewing, everything I used to make quilts for Hank, for Jason when he was little. for every niece and nephew and grandchild in my family. And I sat there on the floor, and I let myself feel it. 5 minutes. I gave myself 5 minutes. Then I got up, moved my boxes into my bedroom, and called my attorney. Her name is Frances Odom. She's been my attorney for 18 years, handled Hank's estate, helped me update my will, knows this house and my financial situation better than almost anyone. I told her everything. The lock, the craft room, the 4 months of small erosions. She listened without interrupting, which is one of the things I've always appreciated about her. Irene, she said when I finished, they're guests. Guests don't have rights over property. You have options. We talked for an hour. I didn't say anything to Jason or Amber that night, or the next night. I went about my routines, made my coffee, sat on my porch, went to water aerobics, had lunch with Gail, who had been listening to 4 months of this and who said, with characteristic bluntness, Irene, you have been patient to the point of sandhood. Whatever you're planning, I support it. I planned carefully. 2 weeks later, on a Saturday morning when I knew Jason had a long call for work and Amber would be home, I sat down at the kitchen table with a folder. Inside the folder were several documents Frances had helped me prepare. First, a formal notice of change in living arrangement. Not an eviction notice, not yet, but a legal document establishing that their presence in my home was a month-to-month arrangement at my sole discretion, that no tenancy had been established, and that I was revoking any implied permission to alter, modify, or restrict access to any part of the property or its contents. Second, an itemized accounting of their stay, months of free housing at fair market rental value for Dayton, which ran to just over $19,000 over 18 months. Not a bill, just a document, a record, and third, a letter, my letter, the one I'd been writing in my head for 4 months. I left the folder on the kitchen table with a sticky note on top that said, "Please read this today, Mom." Then I drove to Gail's house and we sat on her back patio and drank iced tea and I didn't look at my phone for 3 hours. When I got home, Amber was sitting at the kitchen table. She'd clearly been crying, not dramatically, but the kind of quiet crying that happens when something lands hard and real. The folder was open in front of her. Jason was standing by the window. Neither of them said anything when I came in. I put my keys on the hook by the door, poured myself a glass of water, and sat down across from Amber. "Do you have questions?" I asked. Amber's hands were flat on the table. I noticed they weren't quite steady. "This is," she started. "You're not actually going to. The notice of change is already on file with my attorney," I said. "That's just your copy, Mom." Jason turned from the window. His voice was tight. "You didn't have to do this formally. You could have just talked to us." "I tried talking," I said. "For 4 months." He opened his mouth and then closed it. "I love you," I said, and I meant it completely. "I love you and I want you to succeed and I want your marriage to be good and your life to be good. That's not what this is about. This is about the fact that you have been living in my home, and somewhere along the way you forgot that it's my home." Amber looked up. "I didn't mean to make you feel." "I know," I said. And I did know, actually. I don't think Amber is a villain. I think she's a young woman who has some strong ideas about how things should be and who pushed until something pushed back. Nobody had pushed back before now. "The letter," I said, "tells you what changes I need to see in order for this to continue to work. Not demands, changes. There's a difference." Amber picked up the letter. I'd written it by hand, which Frances thought was unnecessary, but which felt right to me. Hank always said I had good handwriting for a nurse. The letter said this, that I was asking for a formal household agreement in writing about shared spaces and expectations, that my craft room was to be returned to me within 2 weeks, that no alterations to any part of the house, furniture, appliances, storage, decor, would be made without my explicit agreement, that I expected to be treated with the courtesy and consideration I had extended to them from the first day, and that if these things weren't possible, I was asking them to begin making plans to move out within 60 days, and that I would help them with a deposit on an apartment, a genuine offer, not a threat dressed up as generosity. Amber read the whole letter. When she finished, she put it down carefully, like it was something fragile. "Okay," she said, quietly. Okay, what? Jason asked, looking at her. She's right, Amber said. She didn't look at him when she said it. She looked at me. She's right, Jason. I don't know what I expected. Argument, maybe. More of the going around in circles that had defined the past 4 months. I hadn't expected that. We sat there for a moment, the three of us. The craft room, I said. 2 weeks. Amber nodded. My sewing things were back in their room within a week. My armchair went back to where it had been for 15 years. The notepad went back next to the coffee maker. Amber stopped going through my groceries. She started saying good morning when she came downstairs and meaning it, or at least attempting to. It's not perfect. I don't expect it to be perfect. She and I are very different people, and we probably would not have chosen each other. But she's the woman my son loves, and she does love him, and in a family you sometimes have to make peace with the shape of things. What changed was the understanding. They both understood, finally, with no ambiguity, that this is my house. I am not a guest in it. I am not a piece of furniture to be rearranged. I'm a 63-year-old woman who worked 31 years on night shifts so that my family could have a good life. And I will drink my coffee on my own porch and keep my notepad next to my coffee maker for as long as I am alive and in this house. Some people asked me later. Gail asked me, my sister in Cincinnati asked me, why I waited so long. Why not the first month? Why not the lock? And I've thought about that. Honestly thought about it. I think I kept hoping my son would step in. That's the truth of it. I kept waiting for Jason to be the one to say, hey, this isn't okay. My mother deserves better than this in her own home. And he didn't. And that part still sits with me sometimes. In the early mornings on the porch when it's quiet, the fact that it had to come from me. But here's what I've learned from 31 years of emergency nursing. Sometimes you can't wait for someone else to do the thing. Sometimes you're the one with the knowledge and the steadiness and the calm, and waiting costs you more than acting ever would. I acted, and my notepad is still next to the coffee maker right where it belongs. If you're living something like this right now, if you're lying in bed at night, in your own house feeling like a stranger, if you're filing things away and telling yourself it's not worth the fight, I want you to hear this. Your home is your home. Your dignity is not negotiable. You don't have to burn anything down. You don't have to scream or cry or threaten. You just have to be very clear, calmly, firmly, in writing if necessary. Be very clear. That's what I learned. That's what I'm passing on. I've been thinking about that Tuesday morning a lot lately. The grey cold, my robe, my slippers, that brand new combination lock hanging off my mudroom refrigerator like it belonged there, like it had always been there, like it had always been there, like I was the one who didn't belong. Here's what I've come to understand about that moment, and about everything that led up to it. Nothing that happened was sudden. It never is. Amber didn't wake up one morning and decide to take over my home. Jason didn't choose overnight to stop being my son in any practical sense. It happened the way most things happen. One small step at a time, each step feeling almost reasonable on its own, until one day you're standing in your own mudroom in your robe wondering how you got here. And I let it happen. That's the part I had to sit with. I'm not saying it was my fault. It wasn't. But I had a hand in how far it went because I kept choosing silence when I should have chosen clarity. I told myself it was patience. Looking back, a lot of it was avoidance. I didn't want conflict with my son. I didn't want to be the difficult mother-in-law. I wanted everyone to be comfortable, and I kept making myself smaller to make room for that comfort. That's not wisdom. That's just fear with a polite face on it. What I actually learned, not what sounds good to say, is that there's a real difference between being kind and being passive. I spent 31 years as an ER nurse and I was kind every single day of it, but I was never passive. You can't be passive in a trauma bay. Someone has to know what they know and act on it. I knew how to do that at work for 3 decades and somehow I forgot how to do it in my own kitchen. The intelligence part of it. The tree to sk. As my Vietnamese neighbor Mrs. Benty, Pham would say, The wisdom was in understanding that a folder of documents would do more than any argument. I didn't raise my voice once through this whole thing. Not when I found the lock, not when I found my sewing things in boxes in the hallway. Not when I sat across from Amber at that kitchen table with my letter between us. Calm is not weakness. Calm, when backed by knowledge and preparation and clear boundaries, is the most powerful thing a person can bring into a room. And the character part, the part about who you are when things get hard. I saw it in Amber, actually, in a way I didn't expect. When she said, "She's right, Jason," and she meant it, that took something. It's not easy to say that. I respected her for it more than I'd respected anything she'd done in 18 months. People can surprise you. I try to remember that. Hank used to say that most problems between people aren't really about the thing they're fighting about. The lock wasn't about the refrigerator. The craft room wasn't about the room. It was about whether I existed in my own life or not. Whether my history in that house, my 30 years of mornings on that porch, my late husband's armchair, whether any of that counted. It counted. It counts. I just had to be the one to say so. If you're somewhere in the middle of something like this right now, I'm not going to tell you what to do. You know your situation better than I do. But I will tell you this. The moment I stopped waiting for my son to fix it and started handling it myself, everything changed. Not perfectly, not painlessly, but it changed. Because you cannot outsource your own dignity. Nobody else is going to protect your home if you won't. The notepad is still next to the coffee maker. Some mornings I write things on it. Nothing important. Grocery lists, phone numbers, reminders. But sometimes I just look at it and think about what it costs to let small things go unchallenged for too long, and what it feels like to finally stop.